Good evening. Welcome. My name is Manuel Carvalho. I'm the Vice President, Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Really appreciate you being with us today. I'm joined by one of my colleagues, Sophie. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sophie Metler-Globe. I'm part of the admissions team. I'm a Senior Assistant Director of Admissions at Oberlin.
Great. It's wonderful to have you all. And thank you for joining us. So this is our first of these Tuesday sessions that we're going to be doing. And it's an opportunity for us to engage with you. We know that we've given you a lot of opportunities to look at a lot of the online things that we have going on, but wanted to give you a chance to talk a little bit more about specific topics. So today we're talking about college admissions in a COVID era. Next week, we will be talking about writing the college essay, and we'll have a different topic every week. So please join us for those. It will be different each time, led by a different person. So certainly join us for those as we go in. But thank you for taking the time. So we know that these are difficult in different times, that COVID has certainly made things a little bit different for all of us. And so we're hoping to touch on quite a few topics as we move forward. But the hope is to also help answer some of your questions. So you'll see the opportunity to, in the Q&A, ask any questions that you might have, but wanted to give you a sense of the topics we will cover to start out so that you'll get a sense of whether we might get to some of the questions before, but at any time, certainly, throw some questions our way and we'll go from there. Sophie will interrupt me because I like to talk a lot, and we'll make sure that we get those questions answered. So we'll talk a little bit about visiting, getting to know schools, and how that all works now that you're probably not going to be traveling and visiting us as much. We are open for business, but we don't have a lot of folks coming to see us. And so certainly we'll talk a lot about the virtual opportunities available for you. Over the last year, we've also seen hundreds of schools go test optional. So we'll talk a little bit about test optional and what that might mean for us and moving forward. We'll talk about some COVID-specific questions that have been added to the Common Application and the Coalition application. We'll talk generally about what it is that we're looking for and what it is that might be different for us this year. And then we'll finish up with a little bit of an Oberlin overview. And so the idea here is to talk a little bit more generally about the college admissions process. Clearly, Sophie and I both work in admissions at Oberlin, and so that is the hat we have on. And we'll try to be a little more general when we can, but do want to finish up with at least giving you a little bit of some visuals about what we think makes Oberlin special, and certainly answer the questions that you may have. But you can certainly answer those as we go. Okay, so let's get started. So connecting with colleges, I think a big part of this college search process is figuring out a little bit more about what these schools are all about. And so what is it that that makes us different from other great small liberal arts colleges that you're hopefully also taking a look at? And the reality is that we probably share more than differentiates us. And so it is a bit of a tough challenge trying to figure out what the big differences are between the different schools. And so it is helpful for you to start doing a little bit more research and more homework to really try to figure out what is it that makes us different. And so certainly the best way to prepare those applications is getting to know a little bit more about the schools. You'll find that some schools have institution-specific essays, but this is where you get to figure out, do you have the major that we're interested in? That tends to be one of the first questions that you have. Am I interested in a big school, small school? And so certainly connecting with us is a big part of this, and getting a chance to figure out what schools have that are different for each other. This is made a little bit more different in the COVID era because you don't get to come and see us. And so a lot of it, we talk about this feeling. You get on campus, it's the right kind of people, you finally feel comfortable. We joke a little bit that, it's the rainbows in the background and you hear the birds chirping and you just know that this is the right fit. So how do you do that when you're sitting in your living room? And so certainly we want to make sure that you are getting a feel for the different colleges since in-person visits aren't available. So we have really provided a lot of resources for students, and these are really new for us, things that we probably weren't doing a year ago to give you more of an opportunity to connect with us. Next slide, Sophie. Thanks. So we have a lot of different opportunities to engage. The first thing I think we wanted to say was certainly feel free to reach out to us specifically. We take seriously the role of admissions counselors. So we say we are counselors. And that's because we really want to support you throughout this process. And so we basically divide up the country and the world into different areas, and each one of us takes one of those areas. We kind of become a little bit of an expert in those areas, and so typically we would be visiting your high schools. We might know some of your counselors. We might have read applications from there for many years. And so Sophie, for instance, is our international representative, and so she would typically go to schools all over the world, and she would be the person you would reach out to if you had some questions, and she would know a little bit more about maybe the leading exams if you're applying from India, or know a little bit more about the International Baccalaureate if that's something that you have. But feel free to contact us. If you go to our website, you'll see our information, and you'll see, by state, by country, who is in charge of those areas. And that gives you a point of contact. You'll see that we really are people behind this whole process. There is no formula to the admissions process. We get to sit around, read applications together, and then discuss them and figure out who we think is going to make wonderful contributions to our environment. And that's what this process is all about. So please do reach out. And just so that you know that this is a personal process as well. So a lot of resources out there, and these have grown. And so this first page here is what we call our static resources. And so these are things that are opportunities for you that you can almost, whenever you want. In midnight, you can't sleep, and you really wanted to know more about Oberlin, this is where you get to go. So certainly all of us have wonderful college websites, and the admission-specific pages might tell you a little bit more about our majors. And so who are our professors? What are the courses that they're teaching? What are some of the extracurricular opportunities? A lot to really figure out and really dig down in terms of what might be there. We have a virtual tour. So in the middle of the night, again, you can log on, see a couple of our students walking around, showing you what our campus looks like. Certainly the sense of place is a big part of a college experience, especially for us in liberal arts schools where we are really residential communities. And so getting a chance to see, what our libraries look like, what our athletic facilities look like is a big part of this experience. And so if you can't join us, those online virtual tours are a wonderful opportunity to both see the facilities, but also hear directly from students. That's another important part of the process as well. We do have information sessions. We're leading them 3 times a week. And so you can join us live, but we've recorded a few of them. And so you can go back and listen to an information session, some of our old panels, to hear from some students, to hear from some admissions folks. And so it gives you a chance to, at your own pace, connect and get to read a little bit more. Then you can also wander a little bit off of the path that admissions might be setting for you and hear a little bit more directly from some of the other groups on campus. And so I always think that the college newspaper is a wonderful resource. It's students speaking about their own experiences, talking about what's going on. It gives you a sense about what our students care about, what it is that they, they're talking about these days. And it's without kind of that admissions filter where we want to, we're not just going to say, the beautiful pictures in the brochure, but this is what the students are telling you, they're really concerned about. And so I think college newspapers are always a wonderful opportunity. We also have a wonderful blog section at the Oberlin website that, where you can go back even 10, 15 years and hear what our students have talked about. So almost any topic that you wanted to hear more about, whether that be financial aid, applying early decision, it's a great way, again, to hear directly from students about their experiences. And those are, again, from their own point of view, without us telling them what to write about. Certainly, if you're here with us today, probably means you've already signed on to our mailing list. But know that we do send you a lot of emails and a lot of messages. Please do read those. We talk about different subjects in each one. And so take the time to read some of those. But it's a wonderful opportunity to certainly hear more about not just Oberlin, but other schools as well. And so if you're interested in similar kinds of schools, make sure that you are going on the mailing list, that you are joining those, so that you get a little bit more of a sense of what the schools have. We will send you information. We will send you reminders when it's time to apply for admission, for financial aid, when we might have an open house going on or special events. And so it's a great opportunity to certainly hear a little bit more about us. And then, of course, social media. And social media, join our Facebook page, join our Instagram feed, so that we can Twitter feed, where we, in each one of those put out content for you as well. And it's great. We've had Snapchat takeovers from our students. We're moving, to give you again an unfiltered view of what a student's day might be like. And then, so those are kind of the static, always been there, good opportunities for you to take a look. But since the spring, when we kind of were unable to have students join us on campus, have added a lot more opportunities. There are more of these live interactions. And so a lot more to be going on. And so even though you might not be able to join us on campus, we have these live informational sessions. And so an info session is an hour long, led either by one of us in admissions, but now led by some of our senior fellows. These are seniors on campus, students who are trained to chat with you for about an hour about what they feel makes Oberlin special. It is a PowerPoint presentation, unlike this one, a lot more pictures. And so as you're talking about the academic experience, as they're talking about the dorm life and student life, they're showing you visuals of what the campus looks like. So it's a great opportunity to do that while asking specific questions. And so this is where you start getting at the nuances of what makes this a little bit different. These are things that we weren't doing 6 months ago and 7 months ago. So for some of you joining us from further out, who maybe wouldn't have had the chance to join us on campus, there are a lot of great opportunities to do these and engage one-on-one. So you can ask questions, you can certainly be connected. We also are doing student panels where you get to hear directly from our students and just more informal Q&A sessions as well. And so you can look at our visit page. So if you might add kind of our visit link to the chat to give you a sense of what they are, but a lot of great opportunities for you. And certainly these Tuesday talks that we will have moving forward. We are continuing doing interviews and doing those through our alumni network, but also through students on campus. And so we will do Zoom interviews and get a chance to connect one-on-one. Those are a wonderful opportunity for us to get to know you on a more personal level. It's not a chance for us to ask you really tough questions and make you feel bad. It's really a chance for us to get to know you and for you to ask specific questions about Oberlin. And so as long as you come in ready to chat, we're going to ask you questions like, why are you interested in Oberlin? What is your favorite subject in school? What do you do to keep you busy outside of class? Things that just should be easy answers for you so that we get to know you a little bit better. I promise you we're not asking you if you were a fruit, what kind of fruit would you be, or silly things like that. It really is an opportunity to, again, engage with you and get to know you better. We are doing a couple of these the next two that we have listed on here are just a little bit different, right? So this year, Oberlin, as most of our peers, we're not traveling to your high schools. We are a little bit afraid to get on planes, but your high schools are even more afraid to let us into your schools. And so some of you have started school, are in school buildings. Many of you have started online or will be starting in the next couple of weeks. And so we will not be coming to your high schools or doing kind of the traditional college fairs. Both of these are happening in the virtual space through Zoom. And so we are still all booking these high school visits. So if I'm the representative for Texas, I would still be visiting the usual week of schools that I might be doing in Texas, in the Dallas area, but we'll be doing it through Zoom. And so it'll be an opportunity to do that. We will, for some of them, have students joining us. If we might have a student from your high school, they might join us so they can provide a personal experience. And it gives us a chance to connect. The difference between that and, say, an information session is that we would only be there with other students from your school as well. But you don't have to wait for us to go to your high school. We're not going to visit every single high school, but you can certainly join us for the information sessions, and those are opportunities. Many schools are also joining forces and doing these college fairs that are a little bit more informal. They tend to be, rather than hearing us speak for an hour, an opportunity to kind of pop in for 5 minutes, go off to the next school and do different things. So if you've done both of these over the last couple of months, anything you would add to both of those?
No, we remain excited about getting to meet you virtually within the context of your region and your high school, and are working closely with your college counseling team to be able to schedule visits at your high school. If you don't see something at your high school, absolutely reach out to us. We'd love to find another way to connect with you, whether it's through one of our offerings or through a interview.
Great, thanks, Sophie. All right, next. Okay, so now get into a little bit more of, so what's been different in this COVID world, and what are some of the things that we um, that we want to do? Let me go back. Actually, I see a couple questions, Sophie, that I wanted to get in. So where can we find recordings of past webinars? We can point you to those, and we'll definitely send our interviews for admitted students only. That's a great question. Interviews are different at all different schools, and so some schools will only interview. Certainly not for only admitted students. And so the whole point of the interviews is for us to get to know you. So once we've admitted you, those are kind of too late. We certainly will reach out to you at that point, but most interviews are for students applying. Most schools, I would say, typically start interviewing you kind of the spring semester of your junior year. Some might be doing it a little bit earlier, but typically it's about the spring semester of your junior year, so second semester of junior year, through the summer and then through the senior year. Some will do it before you've applied. Others might only do it after you've applied. And so take a look for each school. At Oberlin, we start the spring of your junior year. So we've been doing those for a while for those of you who are going to be applying this year. If you're still a freshman or sophomore, there's still plenty of time. No need to interview now. But it's a great way for us to get to know you. And no need to come on campus. We can do them through Zoom. And so you can certainly log on to the campus visit site, and that's where it tells you what to do. And so it's pretty easy. There's a calendar, you choose the date, and we connect you. This is our second week of classes. Today is the first day. Last week was all the students have been on campus for a couple of weeks, but last week was a virtual sessions for the first week, and today is the first day on classes. And so we're adding more and more interviewers as the students are here, and also reaching out to our alumni as we go in. Do we do evaluative interviews?
Sorry, I just wanted to say that you may be paired for a virtual interview. You may be paired with an admissions counselor, and you may be paired with a student from our office. Those interviews are weighted the same. We're excited to hear what that interviewer talked to you about and learn from you about either way. So just know that you may be with a student or a counselor.
For some of our international students, we also partner with Initial View as an opportunity to interview as well, if you would like. Do we do evaluative interviews? So I would say they're informational. They are evaluative, right? We certainly see, ask you questions and we want to get to know you. So as long as you don't show up wearing a T-shirt from a different school and chewing gum and not answering our questions, for the most part, I would say what we learn in the interview is very similar to what we are hearing about in the rest of your application. And so I would say it tends not to be something that reveals something that's brand new as we go forward. There's a couple parts of the interview of the application process that are a little bit more personal. I would say the college essay is one of them, and the interview is the other, where you have a little bit more of an opportunity to engage with the institution, to share a little bit more about what's there. And so if you might not want to share, write your essay about something that was very sad or that was very just touching and personal, but the interview might be an opportunity to talk about those things. And so it's an opportunity to give us a little bit more of a well-balanced experience. And so certainly be prepared for Oberlin's interview and any others. And so it's okay to come with 5-6 questions. I actually would encourage that you come with 5 or 6 questions that you would have for us. And they shouldn't be things that you can just answer easily, right? And so asking us, where is Oberlin, or how many students go there? We hope you would have done that homework by the time you get to us in an interview. But if you want to hear a little bit more about the Career Services Office, or hear a little bit more about opportunities to engage with our Conservatory of Music, if you're a College of Arts and Science student, those are the kinds of questions that we hope we can answer for you as we go forward. Okay, so test optional. Test optional, there have been some wonderful schools, places like Bowdoin, Bates, who have been test optional for 30, 40 years. And so it's not a new part of the process. What is new is that hundreds of schools transitioned to test optional just over the last 6 months or so, Oberlin being one of them. It's something that I would say a lot of us in admissions have always contemplated and always thought about seriously. But not necessarily something that all schools have done. And so first I would say, what is test optional? Test optional means that as you apply, You have the choice of telling us whether you want to submit scores or not. So Oberlin specific test optional policy is test optional for SAT or ACT. And so as of last year, we require that you submit either the SAT or the ACT. And this year we are not. And so why did most of us go test optional? We went test optional because there was a real concern in terms of fairness and equity that many students did not have the chance to take tests. A lot of testing sites have been closed. They might not be offered in your city, in your state, sometimes even in your country. And so to force students to sit when schools are closed, when we don't know what is going to be happening through the testing season for the fall, didn't feel like it was the right thing to do. And so a lot of us have gone test optional. Oberlin has gone on a 3-year pilot project, so we will not require tests for the next 3 years. And that gives us a time to see this class come in and follow them to see how their first and second semester GPAs have gone, if they're coming back at the same rates. And so it gives us an opportunity to look a little bit more to see what's going on. Important to note that test optional does not mean test blind. And there are a handful of schools that are test blind, and that simply means we will not look at scores for anybody who applies. And they will, cross them off. They just simply don't see them. Everybody applies without the benefit of scores. Test optional really is you get the choice. You get to decide whether you want to send them or not. The question we've been getting a lot, and the question that always comes up is, does it really mean test optional? Are my chances going to be better if I apply with test or not? That really is an individual question. Certainly, as we decided to take this this approach, we are being really serious about what that means. It means that if you do not submit your tests, we are not going to second guess you and figure out why was it you did not submit them. It really, test optional does mean test optional, and we're holding to it. You will see on our website, we still have the class of 2023, but in the next couple of weeks, we will have the profile for the class of 2024. But the scores don't change, but you will see our mid 50% range. And so it will tell you what, kind of where that middle 50% tested for the last year. Remember that 25% did better than that, 25% did worse than that. When we list our scores, we list it for the applicant class because that's what you're doing, you're applying. And so we want to make sure that you see kind of what the processes are. Know that you shouldn't just compare your scores, if you even have them, to that. If you really are trying to decide, I took them back in junior year, should I submit them or not? A conversation with your counselor, I think, could be helpful. And so an example would be if you took your ACTs and you got a 26. 26 would typically fall below our mid 50% range, and you might say, I should never submit them. Those are terrible scores. I don't want to do that. When you apply, we also get a profile from your high school that gives us a sense of what the averages are at your school. If the averages that are at your school are an 18, that 26 looks really wonderful in context, and it's something that we will consider. And so you might really want to send in that 26 to tell us that you certainly have done well and have the preparation to be in Oberlin, and you will stand by, those wonderful grades that you've gotten over the last 4 years. And so know that it's not as easy as saying, do I fit here or not? Where do I go? For many of you, I think what's different for all of us this year in admissions is that for many of you, you just didn't even have the chance to take the test. And so I would say if you don't feel comfortable testing, what we're hearing is I've signed up for a test, but it's 150 miles away. They're not offered this year in Egypt, so I'm going to fly to France to be able to take them. Please don't do that on our own accord. If you want to do it because it's important to you, have that conversation with your counselor. Feel free to have that conversation with us. But certainly I would say don't feel like you have to go sit in a room full of people if you're uncomfortable with COVID and what that might mean for you. We really do mean it when we say we're test optional. So when to submit and when to pass, we talked a little bit about that. An important question to ask is certainly, okay, so I can apply to Oberlin without scores. What about scholarships? What about merit scholarships? What about special programs? I would guess that for most of us, particularly small liberal arts, selective schools like Oberlin, the answer is going to be that whether you apply with tests or not is not going to make a single difference in terms of being considered for financial, certainly for need-based financial aid, but also for merit scholarships. And so We will consider you for them for merit scholarships, regardless of whether you have submitted scores or not. Some schools might not be doing that. And so, here and there you will find schools where they might still require that you submit SAT scores if you're interested in the School of Engineering or the School of Nursing, because that might be an important score. Or that if you really wanted to compete for the presidential scholarship, there's a requirement that you score at a certain percentage. And so they might still be looking at those. And so look carefully, and because this is where the research is going to be important. It's going to be different for each one of us. But for Oberlin, and I would say probably for most of our peers, rest assured that we will still consider you for merit. We read applications, and we will, if the scores are there, we will take those into account. If they're not there, we will look at you based on the academic criteria that you have. And so that's your academic, your classes, your course rigor, your grades, class rank if you have it. How have you done over the 4 years as we've gone forward? The other important caveat to be thinking about is what about language proficiency? For those of you where English is not your first language, particularly if you have not been going to school in English, and so if you've been going to a French school, we do typically require a language proficiency exam. And so English is not my first language, but I went to high school all 4 years in English. I didn't need to take a language proficiency exam. But had I gone to a public school in Costa Rica, which is where I'm from, I would have then had to apply taking the exams. We've always taken the TOEFL and the IELTS. This year we added the Duolingo exam, the DT, and Duolingo exam you can take at home. And so that kind of gets to access. So you don't have to go, as you did with a couple of these other exams, to take them at a testing center. You can still take them at home. And so we go from there. Sophie, anything you would add to that or the national exams?
Yeah, I just want to add something that you touched on, but if you don't send SAT or ACT scores, we as an admissions team are trained not to speculate on what that might mean. There are so many parts of the application that are going to give us a really good sense of who you are as a student, how you engage in a classroom, what your ideas are, and what kind of community member you're going to be. And so we can still get a really strong sense of your fit and match with Oberlin from the rest of the application. So we won't be speculating and wondering what it means if you don't send us scores.
I would add a couple of things to that. So you will see that in the application process, one of the questions that we will ask is, do you want us to consider your scores or not? And that's an important question for us. It's a very basic question. Do you want to be test optional or not? Why is it important for us? Because if you don't submit scores, but you say, yes, I want you to look at my scores, then we're going to bug you and ask you to send those in. But if you didn't send them because you didn't want us to look at that, we're going to want to see that you answered no. Keep in mind that when you're doing the common application or the coalition app, there's an opportunity to self-report your scores. And so if you're looking at a variety of different schools, some are test optional, some are not, if you apply for them and the school of, Oberlin College number 2 does require tests, but we don't. But if you put it in the Common App, every other school that you're applying to is going to get them. And so be mindful of that. If you really don't want us to see them at all, then make sure you don't self-report those. And you can always send an email to that institution with your scores. Self-reported scores are important for us if you do plan on eventually sending us official ones, because it allows us to read your application sooner. And so if you do want us to consider them, feel free to do that. But know that when you put those in, it's hard to unsee them. And so once they're in, the schools will have them. It's not like we're actually blocking them out necessarily. And so be mindful of that if you are looking to apply, as a test optional applicant. We can answer more questions about that, I think, as we move forward. Here's a question about this. Are you test optional for homeschoolers too? The answer is yes. We are test optional for all students. And again, we didn't feel that it was appropriate to require tests this year for anybody. It is important, though, I would say not just for homeschoolers, but for students who go to schools where there are no grades, for instance. We still want to know some information about you. And so the more we know, the better. Our sense is that for most students, we're probably going to get grades for 4 years. We're probably going to get still scores for many students. And so if you're a homeschooler and never had grades for 4 years, don't have scores, never took any, outside courses like community college courses or online courses, we might have very little academic information to go on. And so that is an important conversation to have. But if you've been taking online courses, community college courses, we have solid grades, and have a pretty good sense of what your curriculum is and your preparation, then I would say nothing to worry about there.
We got a question that came through chat. We got a question that came through chat from somebody saying, to clarify, do not say yes to submit scores. So you'll be asked a question. If you want to submit the scores, you can say yes. If you do not want to submit your scores, you can say no to that question. And then this person says, if we eventually want to submit them, should we self-report them through email? If you eventually want to submit them, you can be in touch directly with our admissions office. Once I'm off sharing screen, I'll be able to access the chat and be able to send our contact information. But you can let our office know that you have chosen to submit your scores. And at that point, you can either self-report them or send us the official test report.
That's a good point. It is a choice, right? And so you get to decide. I would say, if you say, no, don't want to do it, I'm not happy with how my tests went in the spring when I took them, but then you take the October exams and you feel like you did really well and you want us to see them and you've already submitted the application, absolutely, you can always send us an email and we can add it to them, as long as we haven't already reviewed your application and sent a decision. What I would say is hard or we really kind of can't do is, once you've submitted your scores and you said, yes, I want my scores to be looked at, once your application is read, we saw those, we looked at that, we can't then go back and say, okay, now let me read it without them, because they're already there. We already know that they've been read by somebody who would have been in charge of your territory. So do spend some time with that. It is a very basic question. Which one do you want to go to and go from there? Couple comments. This year is going to be hard to know just because it's such a different test optional experience, simply because so many students couldn't take tests. But a lot of our peers who have been test optional for a few years, they're still receiving scores for 70 to 80% of the students who apply. And so test optional doesn't mean that most students aren't applying with scores. There really is many still do. But for those who feel that for whatever reason they don't have to, is there. Our guess collectively in college admissions is that that number is going to be higher, or that you might be at about 50% of the students applying with or without scores. Maybe it's even less than that. But again, test optional doesn't mean that nobody submits scores. For many of our peers, you're still seeing 70, 80% of the students submitting scores. Okay. Next. Some specific questions here we can come back to, Sophie. So we give you 3 opportunities to apply at a place at Oberlin. So 3 different applications. You could apply to Oberlin through the Common application, the Coalition application, or through the QuestBridge application. And so all 3 of those have added a COVID question to it. It's an optional question. This is the prompt for the Common application. Community disruptions such as COVID and natural disasters can have deep and long-lasting impacts. If you need it, this space is yours to describe those impacts. Colleges care about the effects on your health and well-being, safety, family circumstances, future plans, and education, including access to reliable technology and quiet study spaces. In 250 words, tell us what the experiences are. So if we go to the next one, this is the prompt for the Coalition application. Sorry, I'm going to make you squint to read this. But for them, they actually have a few check boxes. Wasn't able to work. I didn't have great access to the internet. So you're actually checking a few things. And then we ask you to, in the same way, give us this one 300 words on what your experience was. We point at this for a couple of reasons. One is because it's something different. It won't be to you when you're applying the first time and your only time, we hope. So it'll just be another question that you have to answer. But know that this is one of the questions. Why do I say this? You also have the regular application question, right? The Common App or the Coalition general, that college essay that we talk so much about. You probably don't want to have both of these essays be about COVID. right? And so I would say for many of you, that might be a missed opportunity. If you're talking about how COVID affected my spring of my junior year in your college app, and then here basically tell us another version of this, it's a missed opportunity. These really are optional questions. If you had no big disruptions, please don't be looking to see, well, what can I say? What's going on? If you still went to school in the spring, your family was not affected, technology was not an issue, that wasn't a big choice, that's perfectly fine. We don't expect that everybody will submit this question. Can't tell you how many are going to do it because we haven't gone through this yet. But my sense is that really will be an optional question that most won't do. And so we do mean it when we say optional. It doesn't mean that you have to do the essay. But for those of you where it might have really affected you, right? When somebody in your family was affected with COVID, where you really did not have access to technology, where you really felt the impact of what was going on, this is an opportunity for you to let us know. It can be a couple bullets. It can be actually writing a couple paragraphs as well. But this is where you might let us know some things that were going on. We expect that we're going to hear about some of these disruptions that happened at the school level from your counselors. And so they might be telling us that everybody stopped going to class on March 20th and went virtual, or that they just stopped, that your courses went to pass-fail. And so you can always check with your counselors to see if they're going to be addressing some of these more general concerns so that you don't have to spend your time talking about those. We'll hear about those from somebody else. But this is your chance to talk about the specific things that might have affected you as you move forward. And so certainly a wonderful opportunity to also talk about it, but know that this is a chance to talk about those things that might have affected you that aren't the case there. It's not just this. Every year, quite honestly, I think this is one that's affecting us all and affecting us at a kind of a global, in a global way. But every year, unfortunately, we have a lot of very difficult circumstances that are affecting our students, whether it's earthquakes, fires, family situations. So a lot of these applications have kind of an optional additional essay opportunity. And so know that those are always there as an opportunity to talk about some of the other things that have gone on. And so please, do use these as a resource as well. Okay. So a question here about, I think, what we were just talking about. If you say something upsetting, will that be seen as a sob story? I've heard we shouldn't say negative things in applications. It depends is our favorite answer as we talk about some of these things. I would say honesty is always great. And these all don't have to be beautiful, wonderful things. I would say generally when you're writing an essay, and stay tuned next week if you want to hear more about the essay, but you really should be, during the big college essay, you should be the hero of your application. So certainly if an essay is all about how terrible everything is, right? I don't have any friends. I've been bullied since I was in first grade, and the walls in my room are black, and I just don't like talking to anybody, and everybody get away. If that is your essay, I'm going to worry about who your roommate is going to be and how you're going to fit into this residential community, right? And so if you were to say all those things and say, but yesterday I made a friend, it's really not balancing out in the positive. So that's not to say that you can't talk about something really tough that's happened, right? So a lot of family circumstances, a death in the family or a divorce. Try to focus on how you grew from it or where you hope to go with it rather than kind of just focusing on the negative. I have cried reading applications. I've laughed reading applications. It's okay. It's not that one or the other is better, but I would say certainly balance is important. Where these additional information, all we have to compare it is what the additional essays have been in the past, is if it sounds like you're starting to make excuses, that's where I would say we might be a little bit worried. Well, I got a C- in freshman year, but that's because Mrs. Smith really didn't like me. And then sophomore year, it was a D, but that's because Mr. Jones just was never in class. And then junior year, my dog ate my homework. It just becomes more and more excuses, and it doesn't feel like you're taking ownership over these things. But we know that there certainly have been some tough things that have been going on over the last couple of months. And so talking about them, I would say certainly is perfectly fine. So it's okay to be honest, okay to be open. So no, I wouldn't say necessarily stay away from negative things, but do make sure that, again, we're not worried about you at the end of the process. This is your chance to kind of put your best foot forward. And so, let us know about the positive. Oftentimes prompts will have a couple questions. Tell us about a tough situation and how you've overcome it. If all you do is talk about the tough situation, then we don't get to know you from kind of the more positive side of things as well. Okay, so what are we looking for this year? We cheated a little bit with this slide, I would say, and it's because this is what we're always looking for, right? And so the question more is, how are things changing? And so typically, as we're reading applications, we always have all these questions that we ask in our minds. But the top question that I ask myself as I'm reading is this one that we have up here. Did you take advantage of the opportunities that were available to you? Oberlin practice was what we call holistic admissions review. And what that means is that there is no formula. We're not just plugging in SAT, GPA, class rank, and coming up with who we want to take and who we don't want to take. We really want to see you within the context of your experience. And so that's the context of your family. Did your parents go to college? Did they not? Are you first generation college student? Is English your first language? Did you go, what kind of high school did you go to? Are you homeschooled? All these things really help us get to know you a little bit better. Some schools have a lot of AP classes. Some schools have an international baccalaureate. Some don't. We're not going to, reward you if your school has it and penalize you if they don't. But we want to make sure that you've taken advantage of the opportunities that are there. So if the school has an IB program and you're not taking it, we're going to wonder why, and we're going to maybe want to hear about it. If your school offers 30 APs and you didn't take any of them, then we might not think that you're challenging yourself, right? This isn't just in school, though. It's also, what have you been doing over your summers? Do you have a part-time job? Do you have family responsibilities? All those are things that we basically want to know. Have you been an engaged community, good citizen in your community, and is that what you're going to be able to do when you come to Oberlin? So this gives us a sense of what you might be able to contribute. So this is an academic process, and so clearly the most important thing is you're applying to college is going to be academics. And so we're going to be looking at your transcript. We're looking at grades from 9th through 12th grade. Typically, by the time you're applying, we're not going to have all of your senior year. But at Oberlin, we will not make a decision until we have some senior grades. Even if you're applying early decision, we want to see first quarter grades, first trimester grades, even progress grades. But we want to see how have you done, what courses have you taken, and have you challenged yourself? We'll look at the high school context, talked a little bit about that already. What are your grades, and what are your and how do you compare it to others around you, right? And so a 3.5 at one school might tell us you're in the top 10%, and at another school might say you're in the bottom 20%. And so we really want to see what that means in your context. And so every school is going to be a little bit different. Standardized tests, only if you're applying with them, but we would look at those as well. We hear from a couple of your teachers. So we want to hear from one, your college counselor or guidance counselor, and 2 teacher recommendations. The teacher recs should be from one of the core 5 subject areas. So a math, a science, a foreign language, an English, or social studies. And typically from somebody who had your junior or your senior year. Because many of you will be taking virtual classes, you might have a harder time getting to know your teachers. And so sometimes, if you had a teacher most of the year last year, at least 3/4 of the year, where they got to see you got to see them after class, they got to see your involvements outside of class, they might know you a little bit better than some of these teachers that you're having your senior year. And so it certainly is perfectly fine to ask a junior teacher for a recommendation. We really discourage freshman and sophomore year teachers. We hope that you've grown since then, that you're a different person since then. And so we would hope that you would, go for somebody from a junior, senior year. But I would say that the teacher rec, certainly going for some of the more recent ones, I think would be helpful. But this is, those are the basis of our academic evaluation of your file. And so what have you done? Have you taken advantage of the opportunities? Are you prepared for Oberlin? One of the other questions I'm always asking in my head, particularly as I'm reading some of these areas, are our professors going to be excited to have you in their classrooms, right? Are you going to be leading class discussions, doing some really wonderful things? That's what we want to hear a little bit more about you. And so certainly those are the kinds of things that we want to hear a little bit more about. If you go to a school that has 10 students in your graduating class, we realize that your teachers and your counselors are going to get to know you a whole lot better than if you went to a school that has 1,000 students in your graduating class. that's where we talk about that holistic review and knowing that, we're reading you in context. And so do rest assured about that. So that's on the academic front. And then on the personal qualities, we get through the applications, get to know you a little bit more through your essays. By personal, we mean just the college essay. By institutional, we mean some will have why Oberlin essay. We don't have a why Oberlin essay. You certainly are always welcome to submit more information to schools, but we feel that we get enough information through what we get. We ask you for your activities. Have you taken advantage of clubs in your school? Are you a leader in those schools? Have you started your own organizations? And again, remember, it's not just you from 8 to 3, September through June. We're interested in what you do after school, what you might do with religious communities over the weekends, scouting. Doesn't have to be in school, part-time job, but we want to see that you see what you've done. It doesn't mean that we want to see that you've done 10 different things all 10 hours a week. We want you to get some sleep as well, but we do definitely want to see that you've been engaged in the community. Any kind of supplements, and those are the additional essays, and an interview. So what has changed? I would say certainly extracurriculars have changed during the pandemic, and your grades probably changed a little bit during the pandemic. So some schools went to pass-fail to end in the spring semester. Some schools might have just given you, whatever grade you had up until March. Some just finished in the same way. So we know that things are going to be a little bit different. We've already seen some transcripts that are just a little bit different. We're going to be a lot more understanding. Please rest assured that we're never going to penalize you for somebody else's choices. And so if your school decided to just give you a pass-fail and all we're getting is 5 passes for the spring, that's fine. Now, if we got a couple fails, we're going to ask some questions about why you did that, right? And so we still will have expected that you've done well throughout this whole process. But we know that grades are going to look a little bit different for the spring. And we know that what the academic engagement looks like in the fall is going to be a little bit different as well. So that's one big change for us. The other one is extracurricular activities, right? And so many schools have canceled fall sports. Some of them canceled some of the spring sports. You're probably not playing in the marching band. You're probably not doing many theater productions this fall. And so know that we understand that as well. And so your creativity and what you've been able to do with those changes, I think will be important. And so if you were still able to be engaged, if you were still able to kind of pivot and do other things, that will be something that is important. So we're still going to be looking for that engagement, but we realize and understand it might be a little bit different.
Thank you, Manuel, and thank you, everybody. I was going to give a quick overview about Oberlin at this point, but because we just have 10 minutes left, I want to make sure we're able to answer these questions that have come in. So I'm going to stop share at this point, and we'll turn to the Q&A questions.
Okay. Let's both jump in, Sophie.
Yeah.
One of the questions I see is, in case of international students, is not sending test scores affect financial aid? No. And so a couple words about our financial aid at Oberlin. We meet full need. We are need aware, which means whether you apply for financial aid or not is considered as we're making our decisions. But every student that we admit, we meet full need for, full demonstrated need. And whether or not you apply scores will not affect the level of need-based financial aid you get. And certainly you would still be considered for merit, and wherever you would fall in, we would still submit. So that should not be a concern.
Another student is saying that Oberlin is the ED choice, which is really exciting, and wondering if it's okay that they don't submit if it's going to disadvantage them as an international applicant not to submit their scores. No, it will not disadvantage you. Somebody's asking, how would test scores be considered for the Conservatory of Music? I imagine having a portfolio repertoire would be more important, but would it make as much of an impact as it would for Oberlin? Manuel, can you speak to the Conservatory's testing policy?
Absolutely. And so we have 2 divisions. We have the College of Arts and Sciences, and we have the Conservatory of Music. We are very close. We're on the same campus, and we talk to each other. We love the fact that we kind of benefit from each other. And so our students get to minor in the conservatory students get to be here. but it's two separate admissions offices and two separate processes. And so for the College of Arts and Sciences, we are very interested in your academic experience and how you've done it over 4 years. For the conservatory, it's a very pre-professional program. They're very interested in how talented you are with your instrument. And so for every single area in the conservatory this year, you get to submit a piece of your performance, kind of an audition, pre-screening piece, and then there's an opportunity to then follow up. But for them, I would say scores, they're also test optional. They move test optional just as we have. But for them, I think your skill level with your instrument or your voice is going to be the most important consideration. Certainly, you still have to pass some very serious academic courses in the conservatory. So it's not that they don't look at your academic experience at all, but we definitely do it differently. So you can apply to one or the other. You can apply to both. And know that there are two separate processes. And so you could get into both, get into one and not the other. And it's because we do have different processes as we go forward. But yes, your portfolio or your audition is going to be more important for them than it would be for us.
And a question is, how important are subject tests? So the student's asking about SAT subject tests, I think, and not AP subject tests. But for SAT subject tests, that's not something we've ever required. And of course, we continue to not require those as an institution. You, just like your SAT and ACT tests, if you've taken those tests and you feel that your scores are representative of your ability, you're more than welcome to submit them, but it's absolutely not an expectation. For the AP subject tests, we are very interested in the courses you've taken and how well you've done in the AP tests, but it is not required to send us the AP subject test result. So just like the SAT and ACT, it's a question for you if you feel that it's representative for your ability of the work that you've done all year long, prepare for that exam.
And same with the International Baccalaureate. That's a little different because we don't get the results typically until after you've graduated, but some schools will give us predictions. So same thing there.
Question is, can we have an advisor like a yearbook teacher do a teacher recommendation? You can, but we'd prefer you didn't. So we'd love for your academic recommendation to come from a core teacher. So one of your main subjects, language course, math, science, English, etc. I'm blanking on your other courses, but you can have somebody else submit a letter for you, but that would be considered a supplemental letter of recommendation.
I would say, and Sophie, I think you answered it right on. Sometimes yearbook is kind of an English elective, and so it just depends on your course and how well this person knew you. So if they were your junior year English teacher and now they're your yearbook advisor senior year, then absolutely. But we really want to hear kind of from the subject areas. But for some of you, if you really, music is what you're passionate about, submitting something from your orchestra conductor could be helpful. Or if you are really into Eagle Scouts, your Scoutmaster, or if you are really involved with your church, or temple, having a rabbi write a letter would be perfectly fine. Typically, I would say that should be like not one of the two teacher recs, but a third additional recommendation. As long as they might say something different, I think that would be helpful. But make sure that it's somebody who knows you really well. Unfortunately, what we see with a lot of the recommendations from other subject areas is they can't necessarily tell us a whole lot about whether you can write your intellectual contributions to the class because you're not necessarily doing that. So we might hear that you spend a lot of great hours and that you're a wonderful leader, but we really are, for the teacher recs, getting at some of the academic pieces that aren't always available from some of those classes.
Somebody sent a question in the chat and said, what is the difference, if any, between ED1 and ED2 application? The real difference is the deadlines. ED1 is due November 15, and you'll receive your admission decision in middle of December. ED2 is due on January 2nd, and you'll receive your admission decision in the beginning of February. That's really the only difference. Each one is binding, and each one says that if you're admitted to Oberlin, you will be coming to Oberlin.
Carly had a question about applying early. Really excited about so many of you interested in early. Thank you guys for tuning in. You should apply by the deadline, and whenever scores or grades are available, then send those in. And so we will bug you for them. We will bug your schools for it, so don't worry about them. They oftentimes are not available when you're submitting the application. And so particularly schools that have trimesters. But we're also kind of anticipating this year, because some of you are starting a little bit later, that it might be a little bit harder to find them. But it might mean that we can still read your application with what we have through your junior year, but we want to make sure that you're doing well your senior year as well. And so we will wait for those scores to release an official decision, but we can still go ahead and read your application. So don't, you should still submit your application. Don't wait for those, but know that we might, it'll show up in the list of things that we might still be missing.
Callie asks, if we are taking dual enrollment courses, so that's a high school and college course, would it be appropriate to ask the professor for a letter of recommendation? I think it would be great to hear from that professor. We would treat it just like one of your other teachers who has a sense of teaching you in a core course during this year or the previous year.
Know that, Callie, oftentimes what we hear about from your teachers is not just how you've done in that class, but what role you might play in the school. And so it's about not just I did well and I got an A+ in that course, but also do they know how else you contribute? And so if it's truly dual enrollment, it might be that the professor is coming onto your campus and has seen how you do. They might be able to balance that out. But if you're one of 300 in a class and all they know is that you got an A+, they might not know you very well. And so I would say, yes, that's an academic subject area, perfectly fine to do it. But again, make sure that you feel like they know you well, because that's going to be what we're going to be looking for.
Can students take art classes even if they're not pursuing an arts-related major? It seems like performance arts plays a major role in the Oberlin community. What is the studio arts scene like?
So the answer is absolutely. And so we have an amazing studio art major. So our conservatory is a conservatory of music. It's instrumental and voice. And then within the College of Arts and Sciences, that's where we would have theater, dance, studio art. And so the nice thing about the liberal arts experience is you don't have to major in studio art to take a course. You don't have to major in economics to take a course. About 2/3 of your courses will be outside of your major. But certainly there's an opportunity to really engage. And so if you did want to major in these areas, that's great. It's not unusual for students to double major. And sometimes that could be math and computer science that might be related, but it could also be computer science and studio art in ways that are not related at all. So you can absolutely take advantage of those opportunities. It's not a disadvantage that we have such wonderful arts. We all get to take advantage of all the opportunities that are there. So I would say it just means that this is a really artistic place. We have the Allen Memorial Art Museum is one of the, always rated as one of the top 5 college art museums in the country. It's an amazing place. A lot of classes go there, whether it be a chemistry class looking at, paint and how it lasts over the years, to a biology class looking at, how the human body is drawn. There's a lot of wonderful opportunities there, and it's a great, great resource to be able to work at the art museum or to participate in different things. And so, wonderful place for the arts, absolutely. But I would say pretty traditional liberal arts, and then we get about 1/3 of our students in the natural sciences, about 1/3 in the social sciences, and about 1/3 in the humanities.
Question is, if you apply regular decision, can you still submit your application earlier than the deadline? Absolutely. Our application is live on the Common Application and Coalition application. You can submit an application for any of the deadlines at this time, though you won't receive your admission decision until the admission decision date for that deadline. So just know that you submit it now, you're not going to be receiving the decision any earlier than you would for that round.
But yeah, if you work hard and are done, you're applying somewhere else, early decision, and your application is ready to go, you can absolutely submit it. You can always change things afterwards, right? And we hope Oberlin's your early decision one choice, but if you have applied somewhere else early decision, that didn't work out, wanted to switch early decision 2, you can always let us know. But yeah, if you wanted to just go ahead and do that, that's fine. I see Corey asked, what percentage of students are admitted early decision? For Oberlin, it's been about 1/3 of our students come from the early decision pool. And so we know that some numbers are closer to 50, 55% at some of our peer schools. We've been at about 1/3 of our students who come from the early decision pool. So that to say, an early decision is binding. We know that everybody we have a regular decision is wonderful and has a lot of great options. And so it's not just that we have 2/3 of our spots left. We end up taking much more than that. A larger percentage of our positive decisions happen through regular decision, because we need to take more students for each slot the students can move for.
Will we be at a disadvantage if we submit 2 recommendations from 2 different humanities classes if we feel those teachers know us best? That is not a disadvantage. It's great to hear from teachers that know you well, even if those are from the same sort of area of study. We want to hear from teachers who can give us great insights on who you are as a student and a member of the classroom.
I think if you're a humanities person and they're both humanities, that's perfectly fine. If you're a math person or a math science person, they're both the same. I do think that, it's helpful if it's not the same exact subject. 2 math teachers, even if they know you very well, are probably going to tell us more about your kind of quantitative thinking. And so it's sometimes nice to hear from another area. So maybe a math and science teacher who might tell us a little bit more about something a little bit different. But, if the history classes or English classes are very different, then that's perfectly fine too. But I would say, kind of make sure that they're not going to be saying the same kinds of things in terms of how great a writer you are, but we want to hear more of the other. But if they can fill in the, the context from, do they know you from clubs or other things that you're doing, I think that would be really, really helpful.
Well, that wraps all of our questions. Thank you all so much for the questions you asked in the Q&A box during the course of this session. It was wonderful to hear from all of you, as well as share with all of you about the ways that things have changed and the many ways that things have changed in the admissions process. We remain really excited to get to know future OBs, to share Oberlin with you, and look forward to continue to engage with you and get to know you in the months to come. So visit our visit website, attend more sessions. We hope to see you next week at the Tuesday Talks. We hope to read your applications in the months to come. Anything to add, Manuel?
No, just thank you again. Really appreciate it. Again, this is a fun opportunity for us to chat about what we love most and know most about. So please use this as a resource. We would love to chat more with you. Again, next week will be college essay, so it'll be something different. Every Tuesday will be a different topic. And again, we have the information sessions. The info sessions, while the slides might be similar, we'll have different students presenting and different counselors. And so certainly feel free to kind of log in and check in if you would like to hear more about different things. But thank you for the time. Really, really appreciate it. Best of luck. Stay healthy, stay safe. We really look forward to helping you through this process and really, really are excited to read your applications. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful night. Really, really late night for I think somebody who said they were in the African continent. And so thank you for tuning in so late. We really appreciate it, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you all. Be well.